What if the first sign of a stroke wasn't chest pain or collapsing, but something so small you could brush it off as just a bad morning? That's the terrifying truth. For many older adults, the first signs of a stroke are quiet, a stumble, a strange pause in your words, a breath that doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't come with a loud alarm. It comes gently, and if we ignore it, it can take away our strength, our independence, even our memory before we realize what's happening. But here's the good news. In this video, we'll uncover the 3 earliest signs of stroke that most seniors miss what they look like, how they feel, and why acting fast could protect your brain and your future. So please stay with me until the end, because recognizing these signs early could save your life or someone you love. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it right now? Even if it's just a quiet moment in your day, I'd love to know. Leave a comment below. I truly appreciate it. And if you find this helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an important update. You'd think that something as serious as a stroke would come with a loud warning, maybe pain or sudden collapse, but for many older adults in America, it doesn't. It comes in quiet like a shadow. Sometimes it's a strange numbness in your arm. Sometimes it's just forgetting a word mid-sentence and brushing it off as one of those senior moments. And that's the danger. It feels small, but it's not. A stroke happens when blood can't reach your brain. Either a vessel gets blocked by a clot or it bursts open and leaks. When that happens, your brain cells start dying fast within minutes because they can't get oxygen. And once those cells die, they don't come back. That's why doctors call stroke a brain attack. It's as urgent as a heart attack, just quieter. Here in the US, strokes are more common after age 65. It's partly because the blood vessels in our brains age too. They get thinner, more fragile, and less flexible. If you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or an irregular heartbeat, what doctors call atrial fibrillation, your risk rises sharply. And these aren't rare in America. Millions of seniors are living with these conditions every single day. But here's the part no one talks about. Most early stroke symptoms don't look dramatic. You might feel a little dizzy while walking through your home in Phoenix. You might mix up your words during a phone call with your daughter in Seattle. You might suddenly feel off, like your body isn't keeping up with your thoughts. It's easy to say, maybe I'm just tired today, or it's probably my arthritis acting up again. But those little signs could be your brain whispering for help. And still many older Americans hesitate to call 911. It's not pride, it's fear. Fear of making a fuss. Fear of being wrong and embarrassed. Or worse, fear of going to the ER and waiting for hours alone only to be told it's nothing. So they wait. They lie down, they take a nap, and they miss the window. Because with stroke, time is everything. Doctors say the first 3 hours are golden. It's the window where life-saving treatments work best, like clot-busting drugs that can restore blood flow and protect your brain. But you can't get that help if you don't get to the hospital. And you won't get to the hospital if you don't take those early symptoms seriously. In cities across America like Tampa, Chicago, or San Diego, ambulances are trained to recognize stroke the moment they arrive. So calling 911 isn't just fast, it's smarter. They can begin treatment before you even reach the ER. So if something feels wrong, off, strange, or just not like, you don't wait. Your brain, your memory, your independence depend on those early minutes. And maybe the next time you feel a little off in the middle of the afternoon, you'll remember this. You'll listen. You'll act. And that might change everything. Sometimes it starts with just one sentence that doesn't come out quite right. You open your mouth to speak, but the words feel scrambled. Or you know exactly what you want to say, yet your mouth just won't follow. It's easy to think, maybe I'm just tired today, or my mind's a little foggy this morning. But what if that moment isn't just fatigue? What if it's your brain asking for help? Let me tell you about Linda, a 72-year-old retired teacher living just outside Columbus, Ohio. It was a quiet Thursday morning, and she was chatting with her husband over coffee like they always do. He asked her how she slept, and Linda replied, But something sounded off. She repeated herself. She swapped words without realizing. And her husband, confused, said, "Linda, what are you trying to say?" Linda laughed it off at first. She thought maybe she hadn't had enough sleep or that her blood sugar was low. But within minutes, her words grew harder to understand. It wasn't panic. It wasn't pain. It was just this odd feeling, as if her brain and her voice were no longer in sync. That's when her husband remembered something they'd seen on a health segment on local TV. Slurred or jumbled speech, especially when it appears suddenly, can be one of the first signs of a stroke. He called 911, and within 20 minutes, Linda was in the ER, getting treatment that likely saved her brain from permanent damage. She later learned that the part of her brain responsible for language, the Broca's area, had temporarily lost blood flow. Without oxygen, even for just a few minutes, that region can stop working properly. In medical terms, your brain controls speech using two main areas: Broca's area, which helps form words, and Wernicke's area, which helps you understand them. These regions are highly sensitive to any disruption in blood supply. So when a stroke is starting to happen, even a small one, you might lose the smooth ability to speak or understand. It's not that your intelligence disappears. It's that the neural signals between your brain and your mouth become scrambled, like a radio station losing signal. And this right here is why strokes can be so dangerous for seniors across America. Because the signs don't always scream emergency. They whisper, and in a country where independence is cherished, many older adults ignore the whisper and keep going. That pause in your words, that moment where your tongue feels heavy or your sentence trails off, that's not just getting old. In places like Florida, where many seniors retire and live alone, these moments often go unnoticed or unspoken. In small towns across Kansas or even suburbs of Chicago, spouses chalk it up to stress or sleepiness. But here's the thing, your brain is too precious to gamble with. If speech becomes slurred, strange, or inconsistent, especially out of nowhere, it's a signal worth listening to. It could be a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, what doctors call a mini-stroke. The problem is many older adults worry about overreacting. They don't want to make a fuss or go to the hospital for nothing, but time lost is brain lost. Every minute without oxygen means more brain cells die, and the longer we wait, the harder it is to recover speech memory or balance. Now I know that calling 911 can feel intimidating. You may live in a quiet neighborhood in Montana or an apartment in downtown Boston. Maybe you've waited out strange feelings before, and things turned out okay. But stroke is different. It doesn't always give you a second chance. So here's a gentle but urgent message. If you or someone you love suddenly starts to talk in broken phrases, if words come out wrong or speech sounds strange, even for just a few minutes, don't guess. Don't wait to see if it gets worse. Pick up the phone. Call 911. Let trained paramedics evaluate what's going on because they know exactly what to look for. Remember, this isn't about panic, it's about prevention. It's about protecting your ability to speak to your grandkids, to sing along with old Elvis songs in your kitchen, to tell your stories, your memories, your life, because those words matter. And if we catch the signs early, we can protect your ability to keep using them for many years to come. Linda did. And thanks to her husband acting quickly, she's still leading her book club every week at the senior center, still telling her stories, still herself. So the next time a sentence feels stuck, a word goes missing, or your voice doesn't sound quite right, pause, breathe. And remember what you heard today. It may not be just tired. It may be the moment that saves your life. It might happen when you're walking to the kitchen for your morning coffee. You take a step and for a second the floor feels tilted. Or maybe you reach for the fridge handle, but realize you're holding onto the counter for balance. No pain, no warning, just a strange, unsettling wobble that seems to come out of nowhere. So you say to yourself, well, I am getting older. Maybe it's just my knees. That's exactly what George thought too. He's a 76-year-old veteran living outside Austin, Texas, who still mows his own lawn and volunteers at the VA clinic. One morning he stood up to get his mail and suddenly felt like the room had shifted. He didn't fall, but he did reach for the wall, steadying himself until the feeling passed. He chalked it up to a stiff hip, maybe arthritis, or that he hadn't eaten yet. Later that afternoon it happened again, but this time when he turned to sit down, his body lagged behind his head. For a second, it felt like he wasn't fully in control of his own legs. He didn't feel pain. He didn't feel weak. He just felt off, like his balance had gone quiet on him. When George told his daughter what happened, she insisted he get checked out. At the hospital, doctors ran a few quick tests and found something George never expected. His brain had experienced a small silent stroke, specifically affecting the cerebellum, the part of the brain that controls balance and coordination. The strange thing was, George had full strength in his arms and legs, but his control over those muscles was glitching because part of his brain wasn't getting enough oxygen. And here's what most people in America don't realize. Your muscles can be strong, your joints can be flexible, but if your cerebellum isn't functioning properly, even standing still can feel like walking on a boat. The cerebellum sits at the base of your brain like a little control tower, quietly helping you balance coordinate movements and walk smoothly. When a stroke blocks blood flow to that area even briefly, you can lose your sense of orientation. Suddenly turning your head while walking can make your body sway or drift without warning. In fact, many seniors across the U.S., from retirees in Florida, condos to ranchers in Montana, experience these moments of unsteadiness and blame it on aging joints. They start holding onto railings more, avoiding stairs, or walking slower, thinking it's just what happens with age. But the truth is, our balance isn't only in our bones. It lives in our brain. And if the brain doesn't get oxygen-rich blood, it can't send reliable signals to your muscles. So even if your legs are strong, your coordination becomes unreliable, and that's a dangerous mix. What makes this even trickier is how subtle it feels at first. You're not falling. You're not dizzy in the classic sense. You're just more cautious, more dependent on chairs and door frames. Maybe you hesitate before walking on grass or stepping into the tub. You start planning your movements just in case. But here's the concern: that just-in-case moment is often the first sign. A mild stroke doesn't always come with slurred speech or a paralyzed arm. Sometimes it's as soft as a 5-second spell where you feel unsure of your feet. And sadly, many older Americans ignore it until a more serious episode happens. By then, the damage can be much harder to reverse. So what should you look for? If you ever find yourself suddenly unable to walk in a straight line, without tripping, without explanation, pay attention. If turning your head while walking throws off your step, or if you feel your body lean one way while your mind moves another, don't dismiss it. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. Because balance, like speech or memory, is a function of the brain, not just the muscles. George was lucky. His daughter's insistence and the quick response from the ER team helped him avoid long-term damage. He now goes to physical therapy twice a week and is walking more confidently than before. But more than that, he knows what to watch for now. And that awareness may just be the thing that protects him in the future. So the next time you feel a strange wobble, especially if it's sudden and doesn't match how your body normally moves, pause. Don't just brush it off as getting old. Balance changes are common, yes, but not when they come out of nowhere. Not when they make you feel unsure of yourself in your own living room. In America, we value independence, and staying on your feet is a big part of keeping that independence. So if your steps start feeling less sure, take it seriously. Talk to your doctor, ask questions, rule things out early. Because sometimes a small tilt today is the body's way of preventing a fall or a crisis tomorrow. Sometimes it happens when you're not doing anything at all. You're just sitting in your recliner, maybe reading the newspaper, watching the afternoon news or sipping tea, and suddenly you take a breath and it doesn't feel like enough. Your chest isn't tight. You're not coughing. There's no pain. But still you find yourself inhaling deeper, trying to catch something that's just out of reach. That's exactly how it began for Helen, a 74-year-old widow living near Sacramento, California. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. She'd just finished folding laundry and sat down to rest. Out of nowhere, she felt a strange shortness of breath. Not the kind that comes from walking upstairs or rushing around. This was different. It felt like she had to think about breathing, like something had gone off track. At first, Helen thought it was anxiety. After all, she'd had a stressful week. And like many older adults, she was told over the years that moments like this were just nerves or part of getting older. She drank some water, opened a window, and waited for it to pass. But later that evening, her speech became slightly slurred, and that's when her daughter insisted on taking her to the ER. Doctors ran tests and gave Helen news that surprised her. What she'd experienced was the beginning of a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke. It had disrupted blood flow to the part of her brain that controls breathing rhythm and awareness. There was no heart attack, no major lung issue, just a moment where her brain struggled to keep up and her breathing felt off because of it. Here's the truth that many seniors across America don't know. Your brain plays a central role in controlling how and when you breathe. It constantly monitors carbon dioxide, oxygen, and blood pressure to keep you breathing without even thinking. But when blood flow to the brain is interrupted, like in a small stroke, this delicate system can slip. And that's when you notice breathing changes, even when your lungs and heart are fine. What's tricky is that this symptom doesn't feel dramatic. It's not like gasping for air or struggling to stand. It's a quiet discomfort, like you're trying to match your breath to a rhythm that's suddenly shifted. You might breathe faster without realizing, or you might find yourself sighing, trying to reset things even though nothing seems obviously wrong. In places like Arizona or Florida, where hot weather can already make breathing feel labored, these moments are easy to dismiss. Many seniors say, must be the humidity, or maybe I'm just tired today. Others blame it on anxiety, especially if they've been through emotional stress or lost sleep. And while anxiety can cause similar symptoms, there's one big difference. Stroke-related breathing changes tend to come out of nowhere. They don't build up. They just appear often while you're still and calm. Another important clue is when the breathing change is paired with other subtle signs. Maybe your balance feels slightly off. Maybe your words aren't flowing the way they normally do. Even a 5-minute spell of confusion, dizziness, or breathlessness deserves attention. Because the earlier a stroke is caught, the better the outcome. Many older Americans hesitate to bring this up with their doctor. They worry about wasting time or being told it's nothing. But Helen's story is a reminder what feels small in the moment can be a major clue. She was treated early, avoided lasting damage, and is now back to enjoying her morning walks and church choir. So here's a gentle message from one voice to another. If you ever find yourself sitting still feeling like your breath isn't quite right, write it down. Note the time, how it felt, and how long it lasted. Tell your doctor. Bring it up even if it passed quickly, because your breath is your body's signal, and when it shifts without reason, your brain may be asking for help. In the United States, where independence is such a deep part of our culture, many seniors try to push through small changes. But true strength comes from listening early, from recognizing that health isn't just about staying out of the hospital, it's about staying connected to yourself. So if you feel something unusual, especially in your breath, pay attention and don't wait for it to get worse. Sometimes noticing the quietest changes is the loudest way you can protect your future. In those first few minutes when something feels off, your face droops, your arm feels weak, or your speech begins to slur, time becomes your most valuable lifeline. That's not just a figure of speech. That's medical truth. Doctors across the United States agree on one thing: catching a stroke early can mean the difference between recovery and lifelong disability. And the simplest way to remember what to look for is the FAST test. F-A-S-T. 4 letters that could one day save your life or someone you love. F stands for face drooping. One side of the face may sag when you smile. A means arm weakness. If one arm drifts downward when you try to raise both, that's a red flag. S is speech difficulty. Words may sound slurred, jumbled, or completely out of place. And T reminds you time to call 911. Not in an hour, not after a nap, right now. You see, during a stroke, millions of brain cells die every single minute. That's why neurologists talk about the golden window those first 3 hours after symptoms begin. If doctors can give you the right medication within that window, they may be able to reverse the damage. But if you wait too long, the brain loses its chance to heal. And what might have been a brief scare becomes a lifelong change in mobility, memory, or independence. In cities like Chicago or rural areas in Nebraska, EMS teams are trained to recognize stroke immediately. When you call 911, you're not just getting a ride, you're starting treatment on the way. Paramedics can notify the hospital, begin tests, and shave off precious minutes. Driving yourself or waiting to see if things go away costs you time your brain can't afford to lose. So here's the message: don't wait, don't guess, don't drive yourself. Call 911. Let professionals take over. Because when stroke strikes, it doesn't wait for anyone. But you right now can be ready, calm, confident, and aware. And that readiness could be the reason you walk, speak, and smile fully tomorrow. Let's take a moment to gently bring everything together. We've talked today about 3 subtle but powerful signs, early warnings that your brain may be in trouble. The first is speech that suddenly sounds jumbled or slow. The second is a sudden shift in balance, like the floor isn't where it used to be. And the third is a change in your breathing that feels strange even when you're sitting still. Now, none of these signs come with sirens or flashing lights. They often show up in quiet moments in your kitchen, your porch, your church pew. But when they do, they're not meant to scare you. They're meant to wake you up softly but urgently, because your body is wise and it always tries to whisper before it screams. In a country like ours, where independence is cherished so deeply, where people in their 70s still hike trails in Oregon and teach piano in Tennessee, recognizing the early signs of stroke isn't about living in fear. It's about staying in control of your future. It's about knowing when to pause, when to ask for help, and when to act fast enough to protect everything you've built. So if you've ever experienced one of those strange moments, a slip of words, a sudden step sideways, or a breath that didn't feel right, please don't keep it to yourself. Your story might help someone else recognize their own. Your voice might be the one that gives someone the courage to make that important call. We're all in this together. Before you go, I'd truly love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had a moment where your body felt off, but you weren't sure what it meant? Leave a comment below. Even a simple sentence might light the way for another listener who's been feeling unsure and alone. And if this message helped you even a little, please consider sharing it with someone you care about. Together we can turn awareness into strength and knowledge into something life-saving. You matter. Your story matters. And your health at any age is always worth protecting.